a student, you have a duty to look at the entire syllabus and know what you should read. That lecturer or teacher before you teaching you will only afford to teach within the time allocated. The examination structure. This exam is made up of Section A and Section B. Section A is composed of 20 multiple choice questions, objectives, and then Section B has 5 questions, you choose 4. So the entire paper, the total marks add up to 100. The total marks add up to 100. What do we expect from you, the candidates? 1, we expect you to attempt the required numbers in the stipulated time. The stipulated time is 3 hours and you attempt 5 questions. That means that each question carries 36 minutes. Why you need to attempt the required questions? You imagine if you're supposed to do 5 questions and you do 3, it means that the maximum marks you can ever score is 60. The probability of you scoring 60 is very low. It means that with each question you've gotten 20 out of 20. Secondly, the probability of you scoring 50 out of 60 is also very low. So once you attempt 3 questions, in other words, what I am saying, it is almost clear that you may not pass. So it is easier for you to pass when you've attempted all the required questions. Number 2, you need to indicate the numbers attempted. This is very critical. You need to indicate clearly the numbers you have attempted. Then 3, if possible, do not attempt extra numbers. If possible, do not attempt extra numbers. One sign when I get a booklet that this student will not pass at the university is when you've attempted all the questions. Where do you get the time to attempt, for instance, 6 questions? It is an indication that you went on, jumping from one question to, you never attempted any question exhaustively. Otherwise, you do not get the time to attempt all the numbers. Avoid crossing. Do not scatter workings. One working on page 1, another working on page 4. We know that sometimes in the exam environment there is panic. But I think you should control that fear, you should control that panic. Let all workings follow each other. And if possible, reference your workings. Show working 1, this is working 2, this is working 3. If you scatter your workings, it is very easy to think that you've ended the question, and after 3-4 pages, someone may think that that was another question. You need to also show your workings, whether required or not. What do I mean whether required or not? Sometimes workings are implied. Sometimes workings are implied. You need to prepare for all topics on the syllabus. We have a challenge that some topics that require knowledge of double entry, I could call it deep knowledge. Some questions that require some time to comprehend, like correction of errors, depreciation. Students just write off those topics. They say, yeah, I'll attempt this, as if they are the ones setting the exam, as if maybe they are there. Maybe they had dreams in the night. So Students tend to sport, but I'll tell you that cowards live longer. 1, not preparing adequately. Not preparing adequately. From the reports that I read, there are things that can evidently show that this candidate was not prepared to have that sitting. For instance, if you come to expenses in the statement of profit or loss and you start putting land, buildings, that is enough to tell me that you do not know what operating expenditures are. You need some time maybe to understand that. Choice of questions are usually caused by spotting. You go to an exam already focused that I'll do partnerships, I'll do bank reconciliation, but this time it comes when it is not the usual bank reconciliation that you know. I'll give you an example. I think August City, they combined partnerships and correction of errors. So if you never read suspense but you read partnerships, for you just go thinking, I'm going to do partnerships. But you reach there when it is not the usual partnership that you are familiar with. So one cause of failure is poor choice of questions, usually caused by spotting. 3, being disorganized. You cross, you scatter workings, you indicate wrong numbers, attempted. Do not annoy the person who is supposed to give you marks. Do not, I repeat, do not annoy the person who is supposed to give you marks. How? If I have to look for the number that you have done, you're already affecting someone's mood. Because on the booklet you've not indicated that you have done question 5. So it means that that person has to look for question 5. It is going to take some time. And then when they go to question 5, you've scattered workings. You began a statement of profit or loss. In the middle, you realize you wanted a working. You do the working. Then you remember you have to continue the statement of profit or loss. So you need to be very organized. How are you going to be organized? You need to practice. And then you need to manage your time very well. If you do not manage your time, you will end up attempting very few questions. From the reports, it was clear that candidates partially attempt section A. They leave certain parts not answered because they were unable to manage time. And you need to be aware that which question should you start with. Start with the easy questions first. And the easy marks first. No additional marks are given for attempting complex numbers or hard numbers. You know there are people who want to appear complex or hard. They revised very well. And after the exam they will tell you, yeah, I attempted that. No. No marks are given for appearing complex. Then another cause of failure, overlooking marks allocated per question. If a question has 5 marks, why do you write 3 pages? If they say give 3 points, why do you give 10 points? The 10 points are not going to compensate for part B that maybe you do not know. There is usually that tendency, now this one I know, let me write. Another cause of failure, ignoring the core principle of double entry. I want you from here to go and put emphasis on double entry. It is going to save you a lot. It is going to make you earn some, should I call them free marks? There are things you'll be able to identify easily because you know double entry. Next, formats are still a problem. Formats are still a problem. An example, still in the November report, many, they put like 40% use the T format to present an appropriation account under partnerships. But still they didn't know what do we credit, what do we debit. So the formats, even financial statements, you need to know the formats. Misinterpreting questions. I don't know whether it is panic. There are many cases from the reports where students decide to set their own questions. An example still. Last sitting they asked, what would be the use of financial statements of the borrower to a bank? That was the first question. What would be the use of financial statements of the borrower to a bank? 40% misinterpreted the question as use of financial statements of a bank. And the examples of the answers they gave in the reports were so that a borrower knows that the bank is doing very well. But they asked what are the uses of the financial statements of a borrower to a bank. Misinterpreting questions. Next, poor handwriting. I don't know whether at this level you can change a handwriting, but some people write well when they are not very fast, others when they are very fast, the handwriting changes. Please, that handwriting has an effect on the person reading, has a very big effect on the person reading. Then candidates ignore topics on the syllabus, such as depreciation, suspense. They concentrate on specific topics. Attempting more than the required questions. When you attempt more than the required questions, there is a very high probability that what you've written doesn't add up. Because those numbers are set after taking into consideration time. Where did you get the time to do all the questions in the question paper? Lastly, ignoring issues pointed out in the examiner's reports. One thing I would encourage you is to get the examiner's reports. For all the papers that you do ahead, ensure that you have those reports. Because as I was reading, I was wondering, do these candidates get these reports? How come the same comments keep on reappearing? Double entry. Putting assets in the statement of profit or loss, meaning that candidates do not know formats. Please get the examiner's reports and look at those repetitive comments. I want to look at November 2019 specifically. It had section A, observations from the reports, candidates pay less attention to this objective section. I don't know whether they think answers are already there, so it is a matter of circling. I will just say ping pong, then where the pen stops, that is the answer. However, last sitting, only 39% scored above 10 marks out of 20. And they usually cover the entire syllabus. So those who are thinking of spotting or reading half, it means that you'll have a problem with section A. It will have double entry, it will have non-profit, it will have manufacturing, as in all topics within and that is the purpose of section A, to ensure that the entire examination syllabus has been put to students. Then do not ignore principles of double entry, the general principles of accounts. They are very important, especially for section A. General conclusion on section A. You need to read the entire syllabus. Number 2, you need to pay attention to the questions, whereas the answers are already there. You need to have read. You need to have read. You know, sometimes when you tell students that you will have objective questions, they are very happy. They think that one there is no need for reading, the answers are already there. But objective questions usually turn out to be very tricky because almost all answers seem correct. Question 2. Question 2 was about partnership accounts. They're required to prepare an appropriation account. Some candidates did not know the format. Some use the T account for the appropriation account, which would have no problem. But when you use a T account, be sure that you know double entry. Because there are principles that guide what should you debit, what should you credit. The moment you put what should have been debited and you put it on the credit side, even if the figures are correct, already the principle is wrong. Are you following? So if you decide to use a T account anywhere, make sure you are very conversant with what is debited, with what is credited. Next, in the appropriation account, candidates did not time apportion interest on capital and interest on drawings. In other words, partners had brought in capital in the mid of the year. That would attract a different amount of interest from a partner who has brought in capital from the start of the year. So if I brought in capital 6 months to the end of the year, and the percentage which was given was per annum, it means it must be time apportioned for 6 months. That one was not done. The same applies to drawings, interest on drawings. Partners took out money at different times. So it would be unfair to charge that partner interest on drawings for a full year if he has taken the drawings 3 months to the end of the year. That is called time apportionment. So in other words, someone needed to pay attention to when did the partner take out money from the partnership, when did the partner bring in additional capital. Then salaries were not adjusted to 12 months. The question was clear that salaries were per month. The required was for the year ended, meaning those were 12 months. So salaries needed to be adjusted to fit 12 months. Current account. Still, the current account has a debit, it has a credit. There are items supposed to be on the debit, there are items supposed to be on the credit. Items on the credits are what a partner is entitled to get from the partnership, and items on the debit are those items that are supposed to reduce his balance. Still, candidates are not sure, what do we debit, what do we credit? The same applies to the capital account. Still, candidates could not tell whether the opening balance should be on the debit or whether it should be on the credit side. Question 3. Question 3 had part A for entrepreneurship. Factors that propel push entrepreneurs. Push entrepreneurs are those entrepreneurs who are, because they are dissatisfied with their current position. Maybe you have a low salary, so you decide to go out and do something. However, 60% of the candidates misfired. They put good road network, good political environment, and so on, misinterpreting the question. Part B was about the importance of positive cash flows. This was fairly attempted. However, there was repetition. Some candidates from the reports would give good positive cash flows, mean that you can meet working capital requirements. Then they say you can pay suppliers. Working capital is still part, paying suppliers is still part of working capital. The last part was, on question 3, was workings for a statement of cash flows. I've already commented on this. Many candidates prepared a full statement of cash flows, which was not required. Every time you prepare statements or workings that you are not required to present, you are wasting time. You are wasting time. And generally, candidates were unable to pass the right entries in almost all ledger accounts. So, implying that, for instance, many candidates do not know what entries do you pass in an asset account if you want to determine how much was acquired during the year. This goes back to preparation. Question 4. Question 4 was about a trial balance. The purpose of a trial balance. From the report, some answers were shocking. Sometimes we are not allowed to mark negatively. The way I would put it, some answers would call for a deduction from the candidate's marks, because it would mean that this candidate is not prepared at all. For instance, how do you say that a trial balance is used to assess taxes? A trial balance is used to determine profits. That candidate needs to be penalized, because those are far away from the use of a trial balance. So avoid writing answers that create a bias on the side of the person marking. Someone to think, is this person okay or not okay? Question 5 was about depreciation, to distinguish between straight line reducing balance. From the comments, candidates used formulae to bring out the distinction. That is not acceptable. That is not acceptable. To say that straight line, you put a method. Reducing balance, you put a method. That means that you do not understand what straight line is. Still, to demonstrate this, we had a lecturer who used to teach us. When you would give an answer like that, he would ask you to explain to your grandmother. When he says explain to your grandmother, he's meaning make your grandmother understand what straight line is. When you give your grandmother a formula, will she understand? No. If you say straight line is now cost divided by number of years, your grandmother is just going to wonder what that is. So, you cannot use formulas to bring out a distinction. It means you do not understand from the heart what that concept is. Some answers were inappropriate. For instance, straight line is a fixed method. Not very far away, but not correct. Part B was about when do we use straight line or when do we use reducing balance. How do you tell that candidates were less prepared? They leave most of the parts unanswered. So this part was unanswered by majority of the candidates. The last part on that question was about the different ledgers when you acquire and dispose of an asset. This was also not done well because candidates usually have a bias on depreciation. They did not consider the salvage value in computing the annual depreciation. Then still double entry comes up. They do not know where do we record annual depreciation in the accumulated depreciation account. It is supposed to be credited, mainly debited. And why you need to pay a lot of attention to double entry is you may have computed your things and they are correct, but they are marked wrong because you've put them on the wrong side. Before you move out thinking, that one I have passed. Results come out, you've not passed. Because you were posting things, correct amounts on the wrong side. Then still question 5, required use of straight line and reducing balance. Many candidates concentrated on the straight line method, meaning they do not understand the computations related to reducing balance. So as you revise, as you still have time, please pay attention to that. All the methods of depreciation on the syllabus. It is not that always they will ask straight line. That is why you need to know other methods. Question 6. Question 6 was about financial statements of a service firm. Financial statements of a service firm. The service firm they gave was a bank. Here, still formats were a problem. For instance, in a bank, you don't expect opening stock. You don't expect sales. But many would put sales, cost of sales from the report. It is just a matter of putting incomes and expenditures. And there you needed to apply double entry principles to help you identify what could be an income, what could be an expense. Here I've put an example. Candidates could not use double entry principles to identify incomes. Bank charges, fines and penalties were on the credit side, but 90% from the report put these as expenses because they are used to the fact that bank charges are expenses. Fines and penalties are expenses. What would have sorted that candidate out would be the side where those transactions are. The statement of changes in equity. This was also less attempted. We've agreed that one way you see that candidates are not prepared or they are not conversant with an area is skipping that area. Lastly, the statement of financial position. Still here, candidates fail to identify what are assets, what are liabilities. Which side of the trial balance do we find assets? We find assets in the debit column. We find liabilities in the debit, liabilities in the credit column. So if they've given you loan advances to customers and that amount is in the debit column, that can't be a liability. Money advanced by banks to customers, that is an asset to them. It is a receivable. It is a receivable. So major weaknesses identified in this section. Candidates could not tell that this is an asset, this is a liability. How would you prevent this? You need to be conversant with double entry, because next day they are going to give you financial statements of a law firm. You just need to figure out where we find incomes. Incomes are on the credit side. So they'll put legal fees on the credit side. The moment it is on the credit side, that is not an expense. Although normally you'd expect legal fees to be an expense. And then candidates did not categorize assets or liabilities as either current or non-current. Yet that was provided also in the question. So summary, please go and read double entry. Go and put emphasis on that animal called double entry. It is going to make you earn easy marks as quickly as possible, and you will have less struggle recognizing that this is an income, this is an expense, this is an asset, this is a liability.